Our last question is from Amadon. To what extent has the church commented on the paranormal? Dowsing, ghosts, Bigfoot, centaurs, reincarnation, ESP, wookalars, etc. What boundaries has she set for us in what can we believe?
Oh boy.
I assume if a cloudy floating image says she's your saintly aunt, it probably isn't. Similarly, if a gang is Sasquatch are hurling rocks at at your house, it's better to hunker down and pray the rosary than venture out and try to reason with them.
Well, I really like the last two very, very, very much. See, and that's the thing. So many of these things are difficult for one to accept unless one ends up encountering them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm supposed to believe that everyone who claims to have encountered them is insane or lying or this. I don't buy it that they're all that way. I'm willing to admit, especially in today's society, that there's a large number who are. But it's just hard for me. Now, as far as what the church teaches, there are a couple of distinctions that have to be made here. One is that the church does not actually teach authoritatively anything other than those truths that are necessary for us to save our souls. All right? And that's an important thing to understand. Outside of that province, she encourages learning. She encourages finding out more and more and more about the world we live in, both its visible and invisible elements. But she does not require our belief or disbelief in anything save what will get us to heaven or not. And that, on the one hand, is huge.
Yeah.
But on the other, is small. Because there's so many other things that just aren't really, well, I mean, they can be involved at like second and third hand, as it were, but they're not initially involved. I mean, for instance, you know that one of the languages in Nepal is called Gurkha.
No.
Well, it is. Have you ever met a Gurkhan person?
No.
Do you plan to go to Nepal anytime soon?
I don't think so.
Hang out with some Gurkha soldiers?
No.
So I'd say there's a good possibility that you will never encounter a Gurkha or a Gurkhali-speaking person in your life.
Probably.
Okay. What is the church's teaching on the existence of Gurkhas and their language?
Well, that doesn't have, as you say, secondhand impact on perhaps faith.
Yeah. And it's not something, the thing itself is not something the church would ever rule on. Just like the church will not rule on the table of elements. The church will not rule on Gresham's law in economics.
Okay, but the church does rule on apparitions.
Well, it does, because those directly have a connection to one's salvation. Why? Because if you think that this thing that's appearing to you is the Virgin Mary, or St. Jude, or your great aunt Hilda,
Yeah.
and you believe anything it says, and then it's telling you things contradictory to the Catholic faith, it's going to help you go to hell.
Okay.
We don't want that. So that's why the question of apparitions pertains to the church directly.
There seems to be an indirect endorsement of certain apparitions. In the other video that I've cited before, you talk about the Museum of Purgatory.
Yeah.
And so that seems like an endorsement where you've got, burned hands on wood
It
and
is.
stuff like that.
It is, but remember something else too about the church's endorsement of apparitions or anything else in this area. The church, when she endorses an apparition, she doesn't say you must believe it. She says it may be believed.
Oh, okay.
You know, a Catholic does not have to believe in Fatima, does not have to believe in Lourdes, does not have to believe in any of these things. He should.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to. So, I have to get that out there, that the church only makes authoritative teachings about things that are really necessary for your salvation. Now, that having been said, that doesn't mean that prominent Catholic theologians, and sometimes even popes, like Benedict XIV, who was a great scholar, might not write about this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, they may. But that's not the church writing about it.
Ah, okay.
I mean, if St. Thomas Aquinas writes, or St. Augustine writes a story of a haunted house, which he did, all right, that does not make haunted houses part of Augustinianism or something you have to believe because St. Augustine said so.
But he's a doctor of the church.
Yes, I know he's a doctor. I know. But he may have been factually wrong, or not. He may have been right. But his being a doctor of the church does neither contributes nor takes away one iota of authenticity.
Okay. I wanted to talk about Saint Jerome, because Saint Jerome has a very interesting account. It's an obscure account, and it begs a lot of questions, and I think it's fascinating. So could you tell us about?
Well, yeah, this is life of St. Paul the Hermit. St. Anthony the Abbot was going to go see St. Paul the Hermit, and he was first accosted by a centaur, which let him know that he'd gone into a strange neighborhood off the county road, as it were. And then he kept on walking around to a faun, not Mr. Tumnus from Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. And the faun asked for his prayers, and claimed that his people were physical, but didn't really know their origins or their fate, or whether they had souls. So he did. He said a prayer for them. It's hard to say. That's the story that St. Jerome wrote.
He describes the faun in detail. I mean,
yes.
our understanding of fauns in centaurs, is it largely based on St. Jerome's account, or
No.
is it before?
No, before.
Okay.
But yeah, it is very detailed, and so is the centaur, who is a similar being in this strange waste. And now, the obvious question is, did this happen? St. Jerome thinks so. Now, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But the real question is, could this happen?
Yeah.
Not even did it, but could it? I mean, if you have a letter from St. Martin of Tours describing how his head was actually a marshmallow, okay, maybe St. Martin of Tours, but that's not true. All right, his head was not, is not, and cannot ever be a marshmallow, even though it's St. Martin of Tours saying so. So the real question is, can this be? Again, I have my suspicions, and based upon study of folklore, and my suspicions are if this stuff exists, my suspicion is that a lot of the phenomena we've observed under different guises in history, centaurs and fauns in ancient times, the fairies and elves dancing on the green with their castles on the hill in the Middle Ages, and believe it or not, UFOs with their abductions today are all the same people. Some sort of strange race with whom we share the planet, and who are shapeshifters, and who, for whatever reason, model themselves after our dreams.
Wow.
But I don't know if any of that's true.
The big question, I mean, if it was true, the big question to me is, are these people fallen? Are they of God, or are they of Satan?
Well, that's
what is their purpose?
That's a very good question, and many people try to answer. I'd recommend Ludovico Sinistrari's book, Demoniality, in which he points out, by the way, that his use of the word daemon in this area is not the same as demon per se.
Okay.
Rather meaning spirit. But there are all sorts of different attempts to explain this question. And also, by the way, one of the things that's pointed out is the line of the Old Testament about the sons of God and the daughters of men bringing forth children, the giants, the mighty men of old. Supposedly, this refers to them.
Who says that?
Well, Sinistrari for one, and various other people.
Okay.
Basically, one looks at the story of Saint Jerome tells, the fawns said they didn't know what their fate was. They were aware of God, and other people have written this sort of thing since. I guess the best way I could put it is that supposedly, for a being of this sort, you and he go to Mass.
He would go to Mass?
You can't see him, of course.
Oh, okay.
You and he go to Mass. You believe, by virtue of revelation, in transubstantiation, but you don't see any difference in the bread and wine. Nevertheless, you know that it's being transubstantiated for you, for your salvation. Now, supposedly, for some of those who have written about this kind of stuff, such a being would go in and would be able to directly apprehend transubstantiation.
Wow.
But it doesn't apply to him. They have no revelation. They don't know what happens to them when they die. They don't know if God has anything in store for them. And that was the gist, by the way, of what the fawn told St. Anthony the Abbot, which is why he asked them to pray, because they don't know what the future holds for them, or if.
Wow.
Now it's an interesting thought.
It is.
And you can see that it's sort of influenced to a degree Tolkien's view of the elves.
How is that?
Well, you remember in Lord of the Rings, the doom of men, which the elves called the gift of men. Well, they could go to Eldamar beyond the sea, but they didn't know really what happened to one of them if they were killed.
Oh.
And some of them were killed, you remember.
Yeah.
And according to the Silmarillion, it says that some thought they went to the gardens of Mandos, but they didn't really know. So I think that that's kind of a reflection. I don't know, and certainly any Tolkien scholar out there who knows better than I do can tell you. But I suspect, because Tolkien knew real fairy lore. I mean, by real, I mean authentic folklore. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Jrr Tolkien was with the fairies. He frequently came to Los Angeles. No, not that kind of fairy. Will you stop?
Sorry.
What I was trying to say was that, in truth, he was very closely acquainted with the authentic folklore of these things. And he used it a lot. Not slavishly. Not, I mean, the elves of folklore are not what you see in Tolkien.
Mm-hmm.
But he would take certain elements. And one of them, it's just like his dwarves are not the dwarves of folklore. But elements, bits and pieces. So, I don't know if such creatures exist. But as I've said, with dragons, with anything else, I am agnostic.
Agnostic.
That means to say, I don't know that they exist, but I certainly don't know that they don't exist. I really don't. I wouldn't stake your head on their existence, but I wouldn't stake your head on their non-existence either.
Okay.
And that is how I feel about them.
Okay. That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed listening to Charles, please subscribe to the Tumble House YouTube channel. If you'd like to send Charles a question, you can contact us through the Tumble House website. We'll see you next time.
And I would just like to say for our silent partner here, Happy Halloween.